If you're in Melbourne, you've probably realized that everyone around you is coughing. And I want to speak to you about this today because it seems like this cough is going on forever. We've seen people here who have been coughing since Easter and they're still going on today. So there's a whole lot of different things that can cause this what we call this 100-day cough. And that term is used primarily for this thing called whooping cough or pertussis, but there are other conditions that can result in this long-term cough, of which some of us are experiencing right now. For example, bacterial infections such as chlamydia pneumoniae, mycoplasma pneumonia are common things to trigger that as well. Virus infections such as RSV, influenza A and B that have been doing the runaround. Even viruses such as cytomegalovirus and Epstein-Barr virus, and there are even some funguses that can trigger this type of prolonged cough. Even other viral infections that aren't necessarily linked directly to that cough can have a post-viral phase that has this prolonged cough, similar to what we saw with COVID as well, or I should say long COVID. So let me give you a bit of an understanding of what's happening here, and then you can start understanding how to actually try and start managing this. Because in this situation, we're talking about this prolonged cough. There's not really a lot you can do to start actually treating it directly. So let's have a look through. All right. So let's see, this is the inner lining of your lung coming through here. On the inner lining of this lung, you have a thin layer of mucus that kind of accumulates here. And this is kind of our protective mechanism. So when you breathe in dust, it comes into there, or you breathe in a virus or bacteria, it comes in, gets attached into that mucus, the nervous system senses it, bottles it up, and then coughs it back up. But inside this area, just underneath, we have all these nerves that are coming through with sensitive nerve endings. And these nerves are actually going through, and there's kind of sensing, like a tongue snake, and they're sensing what's going on in that area. Now, when we have certain viral infections, we end up with an inflammatory reaction that comes through here. And this is the same thing that happens with whooping cough and some of these bacterial infections as well. We get this inflammatory reaction, which then starts increasing the amount of mucus that's being produced. As that occurs, these nerve endings start becoming sensitized. As they become sensitized, it's kind of like the microphone gets turned up. Now imagine that someone comes up to you and just touches you on the skin, but rather than feeling it as a touch, you feel like you're being punched. This is kind of how this nerve hypersensitivity works. So once we're in this situation, now what we have is an elevated level of mucus that's kind of clogging our airways, similar to what we see with asthma. We have the immune system that's in hyperdrive after just having had an infective process go on that it's tried to get rid of. And we have nerve endings that are very, very sensitized and are now picking up things that aren't necessarily a problem. Now when we take something in, such as cold air, comes through, all of this is already on hyper alert. It gets stimulated. This sends reactions going down these nerves through your vagal system into your brainstem and other areas, and the result is it sets off a cough reflex. And in case of something like pertussis or whooping cough, that reflex can become quite significant, so much so that these nerves get so stimulated, it actually activates your gag reflex and you actually vomit. But it's not just pertussis that can induce these kind of coughing fits. So this long-term coughing can be due to any of these kind of things that set off this type of mechanism, including just that post-viral cough. They all have little characteristics that are important, and it's important never ever to ignore these type of things and make sure that you're aware of what's happening and make sure that if at any stage breathing is compromised that you're getting checked. But when we start talking about this, now the necessary treatment isn't necessarily going down the antiviral antibiotic route, because that might be beyond that. We're now at the point where we may need to actually start trying to calm down these nerves. So what we're now looking at is reducing histamine reactions, looking at reducing hyperexcitability of the central nervous system, looking at breaking down the mucus that's available through those areas. So these are the kind of things that we're starting to look at now, soothing, calming types of substances. So there's a heap of things that we can use to do this. So for example, quercetin is a really awesome way of bringing histamine down. Vitamin C is another way that we can use to bring histamine down. Reducing the CNS hyperactivity. There are plenty of things that we can do this. PEA, which is used in chronic pain, does a phenomenal job of bringing this down. Magnesium glycinate can bring us down. Things that increase GABA, such as passion flower, lemon balm, valerian, magnolia, which also has an antihistamine effect, can also be very powerful in these type of things. Breaking down the mucus, so substances such as N-acetylcysteine, NAC, which kind of got a really big drug during the whole 2020-2021 crisis that we went through, pandemic. Really got a whole coverage with it, with its effect that it has. But anything that breaks down mucus is also a possibility. There is another thing that can also happen through this area here, and that is this thing called biofilm. And biofilm is, they kind of like, think of it as a house that certain infections build. And what they basically do that is they live, grow, and replicate inside that. And then when they're ready, they spit more bacteria or more infection, more microbes out of their chimney. And this can propagate this whole process over and over and over. And there are things that we can use to break down biofilm as well. Most of our sulfur compounds are pretty good at doing that. So things such as NAC, but also enzyme processes such as nattokinase, serrapeptidase can also break these down. But these are things that really need to be used under supervision because they can be quite dangerous. So when we're looking at these long-term coughs, really we need to start looking at once the infectious stage has gone, really looking at calming the immune system, soothing the mucous membranes, breaking down mucus, and calming the central nervous system down in order to wind this down to allow people to just relax and calm that mechanism back to normal again. All right, guys, if you have any questions on that or you need any more detail on any of these things, I've tried to provide you with a very simplistic view of how this works and why we need to go about calming the nervous system down with chronic coughs and not just basically focusing on infection once they've settled and cleared out. Whilst it's important, we do need to understand that this is a complex situation. So if you do have any questions or specifics, please don't be afraid to send me a message. My team is here to help you in any way, shape or form. I'm Trev from Spinewise, and we'll catch you in the next vid. Bye for now.